When we shot this episode in February, word about COVID-19 was just beginning to make its way to the Florida Keys. It was a typical week during high season. The islands were packed with cruise passengers and visitors. The passing of dollars from out-of-towners to the locals, that essential exchange, it was still happening. But since our production ended, COVID-19 shut down the Florida Keys to tourists. And without their money, the tourist economy here will wilt slowly, then crash when rent is due. How it will affect politics is still unclear. Florida, America's favorite political playground. Fiercely independent with recent streaks of red, this state is an electoral college heavyweight, and it's always the epicenter of the race for the White House. Off the southern glades, the Florida Keys scatter into the Gulf of Mexico and the Atlantic. Separated by ocean, crawling with wild things, these islands are off the pages of a storybook. Mysterious, uniquely independent, and disappearing. It's 120 miles from Key Largo to Key West, and it's all one county: Monroe. Monroe County voted twice for Barack Obama and then switched over to Donald Trump. Was that a surprise for you to see?
It was, actually, and I think there was only one Democrat that won in our county, and that was my good friend Dr. Stanley Zuba, who won the Mosquito Control District Commissioner spot. So it was like, whoa.
Monroe County Democrats once outnumbered Republicans 10-1. Since the 1960s, that ratio changed slowly, then drastically. The Reagan years tipped the scales. And in 2001, Republicans outnumbered Democrats for the first time. Today, the parties vie for the county's slippery independence.
All candidates really seek that middle vote. You'll see Democrats go after soft Republicans, or you'll see people like me who are moderate Republicans go after the more soft Democrats.
The state as a whole is remarkably purple, and it's a battleground between both parties. How would you describe the politics of this region to people who may be otherwise a bit unfamiliar?
We're pretty much a third, a third, a third.
It's a dead heat match in Monroe County. Plenty of Republicans, plenty of Democrats, and plenty of everyone else somewhere in the middle. Whatever hopes I had of starting my trip to the Florida Keys on the water were quickly dashed due to a wind advisory. So instead, I'm taking a walk.
This is a very widely protected area.
Along with me is State Representative Holly Rashine.
This is the false mastic. Some of the other ones are more poisonous, like the poisonwood tree. Those are very, very clearly marked.
A well-versed naturalist, she's one of Florida's many climate-conscious Republicans.
We are ground zero with regards to both climate change and specifically sea level rise.
At the national level, whether or not it's correct is a separate thing, but there's always been a sense that the Democratic Party is the one that's uniquely focused on climate change, and it's something that the GOP ignores. I know that's fundamentally not the case in the state of Florida. Florida Republican after Florida Republican, especially in the hallways of Capitol Hill, they sound the alarms.
It's easy for me. I mean, I represent probably the most environmentally sensitive area in our entire state.
What are your biggest concerns about the future regarding the climate and environmental conversation, specifically for Southern Florida?
You're going to see a lot of places in the Keys that are very low-lying that will probably be underwater in the next 30 to 40 years.
People that may be on the fence, maybe they have a voting record of supporting both Democrats and Republicans. What are the things that you think keep them up at night and that ultimately decide who they support as soon as they step into the ballot box?
I think first and foremost is the economy. We probably hear that all the time. If we have a strong economy, people can sort of sleep well at night. But also down here, it's the environment. And if we do not have an empowered and a strong environment, we do not have a strong economy or a strong way of life. I mean, all things are tied to this beautiful natural resource that is the Florida Keys.
In 2012, Barack Obama edged out Mitt Romney in Monroe County by just 158 votes. But 2016 was not the same photo finish as 4 years earlier.
Boy, oh boy, what a mess.
Monroe County voter turnout increased by 11%.
This is the biggest scandal since Watergate.
And Republican Donald Trump won by 6 points. Between those two elections, Libertarian Gary Johnson's numbers in these parts quadrupled, write-ins quintupled, and Green Party candidate Jill Stein's numbers increased sixfold. These enormous swings of opinion have less to do with the third-party candidates and more to do with the Republican and Democratic nominees. Higher turnout indicates people were far more interested in the new kids on the ballot, Trump and Clinton. Trump gained votes, and Clinton lost them.
Hillary Clinton just wasn't the most popular person. I think a lot of people just voted against her. Sadly, I think if there had been another candidate, maybe.
Today I'm meeting with Don DeMaria, a North Floridian who moved to the Keys in the 1970s. He's navigating us Gulfside from his dock on Ramrod Key.
In the mangroves, some of them look good, a lot of them got beat up during a hurricane, but if you notice in the shallow waters, there's a lot of algae, and that was never like that.
This water may look beautiful, but it's not healthy.
And the water's a green tint now. Before, it was always a bluish color.
When did you see things begin to change? Around what year?
The mid-'80s when the sea urchins died off. And then after that, big releases of fresh water in 1990 from the glades. That's when things really started to go down, around 1990.
A majority of Monroe County's acreage is inhabited almost exclusively by wildlife. The Florida Everglades, the famed river of grass. These slow waters are the only ecosystem of its kind in the entire world. Along with canals to its north, the Everglades are a major drainage passage for South Florida's farmland and cities. At times, this freshwater drainage is tainted with agricultural fertilizer.
It flows down to the Kissimmee and the Lake Okeechobee and out to Caloosahatchee and the St. Lucie, and it all comes south.
Those fertilizers do irreparable damage to the Florida Reef, where coral cover is down to just 6%. I think most Americans who don't live anywhere near here would think, oh wow, the Florida Keys, that sounds so luxurious, it sounds amazing.
So there's no way you're going to cram as many people as we have together with agriculture in South Florida and have pristine conditions. It's just not going to happen.
Key West began as a trading outpost between the Caribbean and New Orleans. National defense and shipwreck salvaging were some of the first economic boons down here. Today, the economy is one of a cheaper tourist variety. An unintended consequence of the tourist economy is a steep cost of living. It is expensive to live here, and most working people need more than one job to make it. Affordable housing is so hard to come by that there's an ongoing battle over what the phrase affordable housing even means.
Affordable housing, a lot of it's selling now, or renting now for $2,000 to $3,000 a month.
That's what they consider affordable.
Affordable. There's affordable housing, there's workforce housing, and they're two separate things. What we really need in the Keys is workforce housing that workers can afford.
Don, you moved here in 1977?
77.
You own this house here over your shoulder?
Yeah.
How much do you pay for it, if you don't mind me asking?
In 1982, I paid $35,000 for it.
$35,000. And now you own the piece of land that it's on?
If I didn't own it, I couldn't live here. Water was clear when I moved here in 77. and I could make a living down here in the water, diving, catching tropical fish and spearfishing, doing what I enjoy. I can't imagine moving down here today and buying a house and trying to commercial fish, making house payments, insurance, boat payments.
You couldn't come in here in 2020 for the first time.
I don't see how, unless you were, from a wealthy family, and you're just doing it as a hobby. The Key's got a diverse bunch of people, but I think as time goes by, the demographics are changing. The workers are leaving, they can't afford to live here. Their property is being bought up by wealthier people. Bigger, more expensive homes are being built.
You got a wealthier population still moving in.
I think it's an odd place. Right across the street from me, you have houses that are worth close to $1 million, and then in back of me, there's trailers and lower income things. Within a stone's throw, you have the millionaires and the workers.
Down in Key West, Monroe County's housing crisis is on full display.
You have a lot of rich people here that you wouldn't even know living right next to you, you wouldn't even know.
This
For investment.
is Millicent Weech. Since her mother's death, Millie's compiling a local history as her neighborhood, Bahama Village, continues to gentrify.
Yeah, we talked about it briefly before she was dying, and she was just shrugging her shoulders, like, oh well.
This is your house, this is your porch.
This is the
these are your
community,
streets.
this is the community. These people worked for this. These people weren't just here, they labored.
As the tourist economy took hold late last century, homeowners sold their property to cash in hand out-of-towners, but they were sort of selling the actual town in the process.
A house in the middle 50s that you paid $10,000 for, the carrot was dingled in front of you. You could get $100,000 for this house. I could get until it mushroomed around the city as one person sell out, the next person sell out.
They were sold wood nickels thinking that it was bright on the other side. Then they realized that this was the best place they could have been. This was their paradise.
This influx of new residents is upending Monroe County's voter rolls. Most of the newcomers are white. In the last 50 years, this dropped the share of the black vote from 14% to just 3%. Whereas most black voters are still registered Democrats, most white voters here are either registered independents or Republicans.
When I grew up, this used to be 98% black.
Glenwood Lopez, commander of the American Legion Post 168.
We had cleaners, barber shops, and restaurants.
Beauty shops, electricians, plumbers.
Black-owned businesses, commerce.
Everything.
Everything ran off of Petronia Street. Right now on Petronia Street, the only business that is black-owned is Johnson's Grocery.
Do you view this as a painful history?
It is a painful history because there's nothing left to show that there was history. And that's the painful thing about it.
One bridge up from Key West is the tinier, more industrial Stock Island. It's cheaper than Key West to live and work here, but not by much. Hidden among fishing marinas and RV parks, you'll find Washed Up Studios, a woodworking shop and art collective operated by husband-wife duo Cassidy Fritz and Jamie Mattingly.
His mom and dad actually owned a wood shop when he was a kid. And so he was raised around it in the same way that my dad was a construction worker. I was raised around wood. And so it kind of just fit for us.
Sharing the ground floor is Cassidy's mother, Deb. Upstairs is Kelly Raspa and jeweler Nick Soto.
We're just, young entrepreneurs really trying to make our way in a town that can be pretty expensive.
Jamie also owns the marketing company Duval Street Media.
It's sad because I know that a lot of people from my generation have left because it's just not affordable. If we were in Key West right now, we would probably be paying $6, $7, $8 grand a month in rent, which I couldn't fathom.
Is it tough to be a business owner in this part of Florida?
Most rent down here would be triple net. You're covering the property taxes, all the fees. The biggest problem would be anything that goes wrong in that building, the maintenance you're responsible for.
To listen to the GOP, President Trump uniquely spin it. The Republican Party is the party for small business owners, which they say is the backbone of the American economy. I think this president would uniquely be inclined to point to the December 2017 tax cuts and say, we are the party for business owners.
For me personally, until Republicans can be more socially progressive and can be more inclusive to all cultures and communities and stuff like that, I don't care what kind of tax breaks they're offering me. I would like to become successful so I can help people, not just myself.
You're running and operating a small business here in the Florida Keys. What does the healthcare conversation look like to you, your family?
We get our healthcare through the marketplace, and I'm incredibly thankful for it. We've never been able to afford healthcare in any other sense, so if the marketplace wasn't here, we wouldn't have insurance. I really would like to see us grow Obamacare and add a really good public option.
So you do view Obamacare as a successful first step, but something that can be improved on?
Absolutely, yeah. There's so many things wrong with it, but don't just throw it away. Let's build upon it. We've actually turned the tide on some people's opinions on it. People who in the beginning were just like, no, I don't want it.
Yeah.
But over the last few years, they're now insured because of it.
Monroe County, of course, voted twice for Barack Obama, then pivoted in 2016 to vote for Donald Trump.
Key West went for Hillary, but as far as up the Keys, it's a whole different community.
While the whole of Monroe County leans Republican, the politics is split geographically. The Lower Keys houses most of Monroe County's Democrats. But further up, there's a shift towards conservatism. Every community north of the 7 Mile Bridge is majority Republican. Though despite being Republican in name, there remains an aversion to traditional politicians. In the 2016 primaries, Donald Trump beat Florida's own Marco Rubio in Monroe County by more than 3,000 votes. Then in the 2016 general, Donald Trump became the most voted for presidential candidate in Monroe County history.
I think that most people don't care that much about politics, and Trump came around and just was this crazy guy that said a lot of crazy things, and people liked it. The younger people that I know that support him, I think that they enjoy his vulgarity and that he is just like this, woo! When I think like, oh, I don't understand why people are doing this, it's because I watch too much of it. Like,
sure.
Most people don't watch it, they don't care about it.
Do you ever have concerns that maybe not everyone in your community is as necessarily
I am terrified.
tapped in?
I see a lot of people down here sharing things that I know to be not true. Some guy just posted the other day about how Obama gave the Medal of Freedom to Harvey Weinstein and Anthony Weiner. I don't know how we get out of this. I don't know where
enough
we go.
fake emphasis on a lie makes it true in the brains of a lot of people.
So true.
You don't even, you came prepared, excellent.
I had melanoma skin cancer last year, and those of you who know me know that I take sun protection pretty seriously. I've got one thing to say about sunscreen, and that is wear your sunscreen. There's one kind of obscure part of the body that dermatologists always go looking at when they're looking for skin cancers or problematic moles. And it's a little area right in between your toes, because that was where the melanoma started that eventually killed Bob Marley. To pay a real visit to the Florida Keys is to get onto the water, not just look at it from the shore. Operators like Fury employ hundreds of locals and seasonal staff. They shuttle customers all throughout the Keys, but the main attraction is the Florida Reef. There is one glaring problem. The Reef is nearly dead. Fury requires every passenger who gets in the water to wear a goofy-fitting life vest. They say it's to help the snorkelers achieve an optimum viewing angle, but I have a sneaking suspicion there's actually an ulterior motive. These vests make it nearly impossible to swim down to the coral, which prevents the average tourist from touching the sensitive reef. For good reason, too. This coral is not doing well. The fish are few and far between, and despite the murky water, we're told this is actually how it looks on a clear day. How important, Max, is tourism to keeping your business afloat, literally, season after season here in Key West?
It's our driving factor. It's one of the things that we definitely understand. If we don't fix this problem, if we don't make the reef better, there's not going to be a fury.
Talk to me about the unique challenges and opportunities you see in business, entrepreneurship.
In reality, when you work down here, you pay such a high rent. You either have to have a really, really well-paying job, or you got to work 2 or 3 jobs to kind of just survive down here.
You're fighting for what sounds like a pretty small piece of the pie. I guess your
Absolutely.
trade-off is you get to say you live, work, and wake up every morning in paradise.
Absolutely.
Is that fair?
Yeah.
And that's worth it for a lot of the people down here, obviously. Everything in the Florida Keys revolves around the ocean. The health of the Florida Reef is the county's economic foundation. When the reef dies, it's not just the tourist economy that'll face collapse. Every economy here will suffer. If the reef is the economic foundation of Monroe County, and the economy is the political foundation, then there is a frightening future ahead. All this to say, popular thinking suggests the vote in 2020 will go to whichever presidential candidates got the best climate change plan. But in today's politics, popular thinking is about as useful as a winter coat in Key West.
Yeah, prior to air conditioning and mosquito control, there wasn't that many people down here, but once they introduced that, anyone could live in South Florida. That was the beginning of the end for South Florida, was the introduction of air conditioning and mosquito control.
Talk to me a bit about who you consider your community.
Yeah, I've got a lot of friends that are commercial fishermen, obviously. A lot of friends that are scientists.
And they all live here?
Yeah, great people. The Keys still has some great people.
Mm-hmm. Do they share a lot of the concerns that you're telling me?
Yeah, the one thing we all have in common is this concern over the degrading water quality.
Water is so inextricably tied to your way of life here, isn't it?
Yeah. That's the base.
Widely speaking, the Democratic Party is seen as being more focused on the environment. But that's not necessarily the case in Florida. Republicans here are focused on it too, and the president is now officially a resident of Florida, and it's showing. In his 2021 budget, President Trump allocated $250 million to the Everglades Restoration Project. He's also throwing another $100 million at the fight against algae blooms, the infamous red tide. But the question remains, is this about restoring the environment or about winning Florida votes? Sure, the investment is important, but everyone who covers national politics will tell you, Florida is the most important swing state in the nation. There are 29 electoral votes here, and it's a pretty even playing field. At first glance, the state seems to stretch from the Panhandle to the Everglades. But if you squint hard enough at a map, you'll spot the thinnest stretch of towns that live life a little differently than most. In 2016, Donald Trump's decisive win in Monroe County injected the Republican Party with fresh, independent blood. Leading up to that election, an additional 3,000 people here signed up to vote. With the president smashing political apathy in a way that's never been seen here, the 2020 voting booths are sure to be filled with both Republicans and Democrats. But it's those slippery independents who will be the key to winning the White House.